Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu wa sallama ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een. The question that guides this lesson is, how exactly does logic use language? This lesson we are doing in two parts. In the previous part, we saw that language is used for basic signification, and in this part, we will study how language is used for composite signification. The simple example that we began the previous lesson with was the handsome man is standing. In order to illustrate all of the concepts in this sub-lesson, we're going to change this sentence by adding an adverb at the end and say the handsome man is standing tall. This is an expression, it's a verbal expression. English language verbal expression. Verbal expressions, remember, are language dependent, but these verbal expressions, they signify mental concepts that are language independent. So this verbal expression is made up of a number of basic expressions. The expression man is a basic expression because it has basic signification. It signifies in a basic way. The word handsome also signifies in a basic way, but the difference between man and handsome is that man is a noun, whereas handsome is an adjective. Standing is also an expression that has basic signification, but it's a verb, and tall is an adverb, and it too has basic signification. Now, these basic expressions that have basic signification can be composed. So we have two composite expressions here. Handsome man is a composite expression. It has composite signification. Composite signification means that its parts, its constituent parts, it has sub-expressions, its constituent sub-expressions, each signify part of the whole composite meaning. This is an adjectival phrase. Standing tall also in the same way has composite signification, and that is an adverbial phrase. It's a different kind of phrase. Now, both of these composite expressions are phrases, meaning that they don't signify a complete meaning, and they together can be composed again to form the larger sentence, which too has composite signification, but the composite signification of the sentence is different than the composite signification of the phrases, because the sentence conveys a complete meaning, which if a listener hears, he senses that the meaning is complete, there's nothing more left to say. But a phrase conveys an incomplete meaning, so that if a listener hears it, he is still waiting for the speaker to complete his sentence. Now, all of these things, we are using verbal expressions to describe mental concepts. The grammar of a language, for example, the grammar of the English language, describes how to meaningfully compose basic expressions into composite expressions. So English grammar will describe how to compose an adjective like handsome, a noun like man, a verb like standing, an adverb like tall, how to compose them together into phrases and then a sentence. If I were to use the Arabic language, then the parts of speech would be slightly different, and the methods of composition would also be slightly different. But the grammar is language specific. The grammar of the English language is different than the grammar of the Arabic language. But the grammar describes the verbal expressions. The verbal expressions signify mental concepts. The mental concepts can be thought of as a mental language, and that is what logicians are interested in. Logicians are using verbal expressions to get at the mental concepts. They are interested in the universal grammar of the universal mental language. The concept universal grammar is a concept in modern linguistics. It was famously propounded by Noam Chomsky a couple of decades ago, and it refers to the view in linguistics that human beings have had innate capability, innate constructs in the mind by which they learn language. There is a mental language that is common to all people, regardless of the actual verbal language that they speak. And this view displaced the previous view, according to which there was no universal grammar. There were no universal mental concepts, but rather language was acquired purely by trial and error, and human beings came to the language acquisition process as blank slates. So, there's the area of linguistics. It's an interesting area, and it would enrich this discussion that the logicians are concerned with. But the method of the logicians is different than the method of modern linguistics. Modern linguistics generally seeks to argue based on empirical observations, whereas the Muslim logicians would argue that this is something that is known through introspection without any empirical means. So the Muslim logicians are interested in this universal grammar of the universal mental language. And here, when we are studying about the composite signification of expressions, or the signification of composite expressions, it is this universal grammar, this universal mental language that the logicians are describing. Athiruddin al-Abhari, he describes this, and he says that expressions are either basic. The word for basic in Arabic is mufrad. The word mufrad in Arabic has many different meanings depending on context. It has several different meanings in the science of Arabic grammar, for example. And in the science of logic, of mantiq, it has a completely different meaning. Mufrad, one of the meanings in Arabic grammar of this word is singular. Over here it doesn't mean singular, over here it means basic. In other words, non-composed. So expressions, Athiruddin al-Abhari says, are either mufrad, composite, basic, or composite. And the word he uses for composite here is mu'allaf. There's another word that is more frequently used, murakkab, which we've already used in the previous sub-lesson. So he says that expressions are either basic or composite. What's a basic expression? He says an expression is basic when it is not comprised of sub-expressions that signify part of its meaning. Like the expression human. Let's take our running example. So if we take the sentence, the handsome man is standing tall, this sentence, or a composite expression, this composite expression is composed of several basic expressions. It's composed of a basic expression man, a basic expression standing. These are the two integral expressions of this composite expression. You can say the man is standing without needing handsome or tall. But handsome and tall are also basic expressions. Each one of these basic expressions in English grammar is described using a different term. So man is called a noun, standing is a verb, handsome is an adjective, tall is an adverb. These descriptions are language specific. In the Arabic language they would label the parts of speech in a different way, but the idea of having a basic expression which is going to be composed into a composite expression, what we want to focus on is on the mental meanings that are signified, because those, as we've said many times, are language independent. So the example that Athiruddin al-Abhari gives for a basic expression is human. A single basic word signifies a basic concept, actually it signifies a composite concept, but it signifies the composite concept in a basic way. The signification is not composed. This is the first kind of expression, basic expression. In the previous sub-lesson, when we learned about the various kinds of basic signification, complete, partial, and implicative, the focus of this lesson is composite expressions. So he says that an expression is composite when it is comprised of sub-expressions that signify part of its meaning. So the basic expressions that we just saw were not composed of sub-expressions. Man is not composed of a sub-expression. Handsome is not composed of a sub-expression. Standing is not composed of any sub-expressions, and tall is also not composed of any sub-expressions. But the entire sentence, the handsome man is standing tall, this is a composite expression because it's composed of sub-expressions: handsome, man, standing, tall, and these sub-expressions signify part of its meaning, meaning that when you bring together the expression, when you form a composite expression, you also compose the meanings of the universal mental language. And so that's why the sub-expressions, they signify part of the composite meaning. So here we have two kinds of composite expressions. That's why I modified the running example slightly. You have a composite expression, composite expression here in Arabic we would call a lafzul murakkab, instead of mu'allaf as the author uses in the text. Murakkab is a more famous, more popular term. And there is so this lafzul murakkab composite expression is of two kinds. It's either a phrase, which in Arabic is murakkab naqis, or it's a sentence murakkab tam. Let's take examples. So if we take our example, the handsome man is standing tall. Handsome man and standing tall are both phrases. A phrase in Arabic is called murakkab naqis, which literally means an incomplete composite expression. These are incomplete because when someone hears them, one doesn't think that the meaning has been completed. One is still waiting for something more to be said. Handsome man, so what? Standing tall, what is it that's standing tall? What about the handsome man? So these are phrases, murakkab naqis. They're composite expressions because they are composed of sub-expressions that signify part of the meaning. Handsome man is composed of handsome and man. Standing tall is composed of standing and tall. But they are phrases. They aren't sentences. They're murakkab naqis. Now you have in various languages different kinds of phrases. So handsome man in English is called an adjectival phrase. Standing tall is called an adverbial phrase. In Arabic grammarians, they describe phrases in a different way. And so the way that they categorize the verbal expressions of the language would vary, but the mental concepts that are signified would be the same. Because both English and Arabic describe the universal mental language. So handsome man and standing tall are phrases, but the entire sentence, the entire statement, the handsome man is standing tall, is murakkab tam, a complete composite expression, because when one says it, the meaning has been completed. The handsome man is standing tall. One is not waiting for anything more to be said. So to go back to the author's, our teacher's description, he says an expression is composite when it is comprised of sub-expressions that signify part of its meaning, and he gives the example of someone who throws stones. This is a composite expression. This is a phrase. It's not a sentence. But we saw there's two kinds of composite expressions, phrases and sentences. Now again, what we want to emphasize here is that this division of expressions into phrases and sentences, the author is talking about verbal expressions, the composition of verbal expressions. Composite verbal expressions signify composite mental concepts. So we have the composite verbal expression, someone who throws stones, or the composite verbal expression, the handsome man is standing tall. These composite verbal expressions, they signify composite mental concepts. There's a composition that's happened in the mind. The verbal expressions are language dependent. So I'm describing them in the English language. The author of our text describes them in the Arabic language. If somebody was teaching logic in Chinese, they would describe it in the Chinese language. But the corresponding mental concepts are universal. Different languages, they signify the same mental concepts. Human beings have one universal mental language, and that is the real language of logic. So to wrap up this lesson, the question that has been guiding this lesson is, how exactly does logic use language? And we saw that logicians, they use language for basic signification and for composite signification. And so logicians, they use language to carefully compose mental concepts. They will use verbal expressions, which will vary from language to language, to carefully compose mental concepts to guide us to inference, to mental inference. In the inference either of conceptual knowledge or of propositional knowledge. So this leads us to the question, so if the point of expressions is the mental concepts, what kind of mental concepts are important to logicians? And the answer to this question is that logicians are interested in a kind of concept called a universal concept. What is a universal concept? That's our next lesson. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم والله سبحانه وتعالى أعلم وهو حسبنا ونعم الوكيل.